I'm 40. I've been doing auto body and paint since I was 25. I'm self-taught. I've always loved cars and I've always worked on my own cars, doing my own maintenance and repairs since I was 14. And before that, I, tried to work on my own go-karts and scooters and stuff. Bicycles before that. So yeah, I've always been into cars, always been good at working on cars. And then here I am, 40, still owning a shop. Let's see, that's 15 years, I guess. Self-taught. I read a lot of books, and then used my tax return to buy a paint gun, an air compressor, and a few other basic items to get started. And I painted my own motorcycle in the carport, and then painted a neighbor's motorcycle in the carport, then another neighbor's motorcycle. Then I took a vehicle in trade for mechanical work. It was a 85 Camaro V6, very undesirable car. No spoiler, no ground effects, brown interior. So I took that 85 Camaro and painted it silver, fixed the dents on it, tried to. Loaded them up with Bondo. That stuff was like sanding concrete. Loaded it with Bondo, painted it silver. I couldn't just do it plain and simple, so I put diamond dust, like powdered, ground up diamonds in the clear coat. So I put that car on eBay, expecting to get, I had given the guy $250 off of his mechanical bill in trade for the car, and I spent $110 on the materials, not the supplies, but on the materials to paint the car, the paint, the base coat, clear coat, primer, tape, paper. This stuff isn't free. So I had like $400 and something, I think, in the car, between money I spent on the materials and on the credit I gave this guy off of the labor. And I put it on eBay thinking I'd get like $1,000 maybe. Man, somebody bought that car for like $2,805. I felt almost guilty. I messaged the person. I was like, "You're in North Carolina." I was in Florida, and I was like, "You sure you want this thing?" It was wet, all right. It had curtains of drips all up and down the sides. He's like, "I'll wet sand and buff the runs out. Love the car." I sold that thing for $2,800 and something, and then I bought equipment, more supplies, more equipment. And man, I turned my carport into a body shop, y'all, and I'm talking quick. I had only been I read about auto body and paint for years before I ever even touched any equipment. I just read about, tutorials in magazines and, online. And this was back in like the 90s and the early 2000s, so the resources weren't as great. There was no such thing as the tube for you to just jump on and learn how to do paint and body. So I read about it, imagined myself doing the things that I read about, and then whenever I finally did actually do those things in real life, it was familiar. It was like I had done it before, even though I hadn't. So I just familiarized myself with auto body and paint methods before I even physically did it. I had read to set the paint gun pressure to 15 psi. So I hook the paint gun up, and I turn the dial, turn the regulator until it's at 15 psi. Just like the books that I had been reading for years said, set your air pressure to 15 psi. So me being by the book, I did that, and I painted that whole Camaro at 15 psi. Problem is that 15 psi that they were talking about was supposed to be on the trigger. So instead, I set it at 15 psi just with the hose hooked up off the trigger. Then when I got on the trigger, it was dropping to probably 6 or 7 psi. The fan pattern was 2 inches wide. I finished at like 1 a.m. So it's like, what's that, 6 hours of spraying. I remember holding the paint gun this close with a 2 inch wide pattern. My, sole income was in my early 20s. I worked on people's cars. Sometimes it would just be boring stuff like spark plugs and belts and basic tune-up, even oil change here and there, but a lot of times it was bigger custom mechanic work, like installing a Chevy V8 into a Datsun 260Z. That's how I got the $250 '85 brown Camaro. That was my first paint job. I installed a V8 in a Datsun for a guy. Took his stock motor out, put the V8 in it, changed the rear end to a stronger rear end. He owed me a couple of grand, and he gave me his current daily driver. Once I was finished with his custom Datsun, he gave me the '85 Camaro, and he was a pizza delivery guy, so I knew the car was reliable. So yeah, this guy wanted one of my custom, Datsun projects. He wanted a V8 in it. I was also just learning auto body and paint, but I hadn't done it for anyone yet. I think I may have painted my own motorcycle, so I ended up installing a V8 in a Datsun 260Z and then taking his Camaro for trade. Then I put a paint job on the Camaro, sold it for a killing, $2,800. Used that money to buy equipment to do more auto body and paint. And I had no credibility, and it's hard to talk people. Looking back, how did I do it? How did I talk grown adults into handing me large sums of money, even by modern standards, and giving me their vehicles, some of them valuable vehicles, to let me paint them underneath my carport at my double wide trailer? Man, that's the gift of gab, or whatever you call it, And but I'll tell you what, I backed up everything I said. I can't even say that right off the bat that I ever was distruthful about the length of my experience. I don't think I was dishonest to the first few people, but then the next step was, once I had a few neighbors and friends' paint jobs under my belt, and had painted a couple of vehicles and then sold them for profit, and used that money to buy more equipment. At that point, then me and my neighbors and friends who I had done paint jobs for would go to local car and or motorcycle shows, and it was motorcycle shows, I believe, because that's what I started out painting, was my motorcycle and then two neighbors' motorcycles. So we would roll sometimes like 5 deep to a motorcycle show, and I printed out business cards at home that had a picture of my chrome metal flake Suzuki, and there you are. I'm in business, and I would stick those cards all over the motorcycle, and people would love the the glittery metal flake, and they would take one of those cards, and then next thing you know, I'm booking jobs, y'all. There I was, 25 years old. I've been working on cars my whole life, but had only done a few paint jobs, had never gone to trade school, had never worked at a body shop. Couldn't do body work. I was only a prima donna painter. Had a real good eye for flames and some types of graphics. Huge holes in my game. So I never came in talking bull. I would refer back to, yeah, a few years ago I painted my Kawasaki silver with charcoal gray flames with blue outlines. Maybe we should do that. And they're like, you got pictures of that? Yeah. Well, thank God we didn't have, digital cameras worth a darn back then. I had pictures, all right. It was like looking at just blobs of pixels. And people would come to me and they would ask me for one thing, and I would talk them into another. So, this guy came to me with a 3-year-old Harley, and it was an anniversary special that had a distinctive, it was a maroon and black anniversary paint job. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. I don't care. I'll sand this heritage, limited edition paint job down, and I'll respray it. I got no loyalties. I don't remember the details, but I know he didn't just come into wanting this stuff on his own out of the blue. But I ended up painting that Harley, instead of just white, I ended up painting that Harley with blue Chinese dragons, like really ornate, like curvy, thorny edged blue, silver, black, white Chinese dragons on each side of the gas tank, and matching style flames on the saddlebags and on the front fender, on the side covers, on the side by the engine under the seat, and on the rear fender. And we got a big fiberglass fairing that the bike didn't come with, and we installed it. I painted the dragons and flames on the fairing. I put blue pearl in the clear coat over the whole white paint job, so it had a blue glow to it, matching the blue dragons, and blue flames all over. All the flames had, the outlines of all the flames and all the dragons had black thorns around them all, like a tribal thorn effect. I've never seen anyone do it before. I used a liner brush, a tiny little liner brush, and made thorny Chinese dragons. It was white with blue pearl over it, so it was white, but then it had all the highlights everywhere that you would see a gleam, highlight had a blue haze, a blue glow over it, and blue dragons, thorny flames, blue lighting. The blue light reflected off the chrome, so I made a couple $1,000s off that job, and this guy got an amazing paint job. From looking back, I was an artist. I don't do that stuff now, but I started out, I was an artist, and that was exciting times. I take everything so seriously that I'm like I'm a nervous wreck. I'm running behind on everything. Like, my chest gets heavy as I say it. I'm running behind on everything, but at least I'm still moving. At least I'm still working on it. I'm trying to get in where I fit in, or figure out what I need to be doing in life. My goal is to not take in any more jobs. I need to finish this, which should be today. I got to dye all this gray plastic body cladding red to match the truck. I've got a collision job out there that I barely touched. I've taken it apart, and now I got to put it together. And then I should be done with it next week. Then I've got this 65 Mustang convertible that I've had for years and just haven't taken the steps to get her done. So I need to quit taking jobs in. I need to say no when somebody comes and asks for an estimate, and politely and briefly explain that I'm closing. And you know, if I want to get a workshop just like this, but get one just like this with a paint booth, everything. You know, if this were my workshop and I were having fun, I probably would be having fun. I probably would feel better. And I guess it's all in the way you think of it, because isn't that what I'm doing?